I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember bacon makes everything better.
Hey folks, welcome back to the David Glenn Show, now seen and heard exclusively here on the North Carolina Sports Network. Today's featured guest, who earlier this year was inducted into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame, leads the organization that oversees the athletic programs at more than 430 public schools here in North Carolina at the high school level. That huge organizational umbrella includes this week's state championship football games, which will be held at Keaton Stadium in Chapel Hill and Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh. In recent years, our guest also has been locked in a battle of sorts with members of the North Carolina State Legislature over the way our state's high school athletics should be governed and managed, and how certain athletic-related money should be distributed to her organization's member schools. Q Tucker, our guest, has been with the North Carolina High School Athletic Association since 1991, and became its commissioner in 2015. She's originally from Rockingham County, North Carolina, north of Greensboro, where she was an outstanding student and athlete at Stoneville High School. She then played basketball at what's now called Mars Hill University, north of Asheville, and she later became a member of that school's Athletic Hall of Fame. She earned a master's degree in physical education at UNC Greensboro, where she also served as a graduate assistant coach for the women's volleyball and women's basketball teams. She also has served as a game official in basketball, softball, and volleyball, a very successful head coach in women's basketball and women's volleyball at Reidsville High School. She then worked as an assistant basketball coach at North Carolina State University under the legendary coach Kay Yow, before accepting a job offer from Charlie Adams, who was then the North Carolina High School Athletic Association commissioner. That was back in 1991. When she accepted that commissioner's job in 2015, she became just the second black female ever in charge of any state's high school athletic program. Since her last visit with us, she was inducted into that North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame just this past May. Q Tucker, welcome back to the David Glenn Show, and congratulations on that latest honor. How are you?
I'm doing great, David. Thank you so very much. And to hear all of that you just shared really is humbling. And sometimes I pinch myself to think about, my humble beginnings in Reidsville and Rockingham County, and the opportunities that I've had along the way. I feel especially blessed to have experienced all of that and to still be in this role at this time.
I've heard you use those words like humbled and blessed over the years. I also remember you using the word surprised when it came to this latest Hall of Fame call. What were some things that maybe you could share with us today that perhaps you did incorporate into your comments back in those induction ceremonies at the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame celebration in Charlotte earlier this year?
Well, the first thing that I thought about as once I received that call was the fact that, my mom and dad, my mom, a career public school educator, my dad, a very successful businessman, owned his own shoe repair business. And as I thought about it, and as I shared with those people who went into the hall with me, it was just really to their credit that my mom was so instrumental in making sure that I, along with my sister, understood the value of education. You must conjugate verbs because you will one day have to stand up in front of people and you need to sound intelligent, even if you're not. And my dad, because of his businessman skills and techniques, and being able to relate to all different people from different walks of life, different races, he helped us understand that you treat people the way you want to be treated. So that golden rule. And so as I shared with the likes of Jim Nance and Randolph Childress and Steve Smith and Shay Ralph and others who were there with me in Charlotte, it just makes you realize that those values and those foundation building blocks are so important because they do make a difference in terms of your opportunities and the things that you're able to experience in life. So again, I am just so grateful for that opportunity and grateful really that my mom is still alive at 97 and was there with me in Charlotte. And my sister and other members of my family, and it was just a high time. And I just, again, like I said, I just pinch myself sometimes to think about that experience and really all the experiences that I've enjoyed along my career journey.
We have seen your organizational skills and your people skills put to the test in recent years here in North Carolina. The last time we talked, there was a North Carolina state law, which has since been enacted, that basically removed some of the powers that the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, in some cases, has had for more than 100 years. And in other cases, maybe just has limited those traditional powers. What should North Carolina's citizens know? What should fans of high school athletics in our state know about those changes since we talked a year ago and how they have affected your organization and your member schools all across our state?
Well, the first thing that I would say to anybody who is perhaps listening, we're still doing the things that we've always done. We're trying to help make sure that everybody understands that this is education-based athletics and that we're trying to provide those memorable experiences and opportunities for our young people to use their skills to play athletics, but to learn lessons that will help them once they graduate from high school, whether they go on to college to play, they go on to college as a student, they go straight into the work field, maybe they go into armed services, wherever they end up, that if they played in our programs, that they learn some lessons that will be critical for their success in life. And we're still doing those things. The values, our core values have not changed, regardless of who is directing or giving us some marching orders. The High School Athletic Association is still in the business of education-based athletics. We are still providing the leadership and the governance so that when they play their games, they play during the regular season, they know what those administrative skills are, especially as they relate to conducting games and conducting those sports. We answer to the State Board of Education, especially the Superintendent of Public Instruction, as it relates to all of the eligibility rules, such as the age that you can play, how many semesters you can play, your address, those kinds of things. We answer to them. Scholastic accountability, attendance. So they now are in charge of those. If we wish to make changes or suggest changes, those changes then have to go to the State Board of Education by way of the superintendent. Another thing, though, that really has changed has to do with the ways in which we're able to manage our monies, or the way in which we can share in revenue from the sports themselves. We don't get any money from our member schools during the regular season. We share revenues once the playoffs come. And so when the law was passed, it dictated that we could never take more than 33% of the gate share in a playoff contest. So that's changed then the way we've had to approach some things, because our corporate partnerships are even more critical because of that. That's one of the areas that we've seen changed. And then, of course, as is very well known, our board of directors, before everything, all the dust settled, created a separate foundation so that we were able to take all of the endowment dollars that the member schools have benefited from over the years. Those are now under the umbrella of the North Carolina Foundation, NCHSAA Foundation. There is a separate board of trustees, so they govern all of those dollars. No longer can we provide scholarships. No longer can we provide grants to schools because the law says we can't. So that's different. Now, if an entity gives us money and say we want a scholarship, then the NCHSAA could do that. But any other scholarships that we wanted to initiate or think about starting, all of that now is no longer under our umbrella. And so that foundation does all of that. So those are some changes that we've made, but our board of directors, who represent all regions of the state, represent superintendents, athletic directors, principals, coaches, they continue to do the job that I think our member schools, 442 member schools today, they continue to try to help steer this ship. And our staff comes every day as the day-to-day staff trying to make sure that the ship is being steered the way the membership would ask us to. So those are some of the things that are still in place, some things that have changed. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned earlier, we're going to have state championships this coming weekend. And it's because of the work of the NCHSAA Board of Directors and this staff here who is working right now to make sure that we're ready to go come Friday night.
In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network. I am a better person and a more effective business owner for having known and learned from Emily Parks over many years now. Emily's company, Organize for Success, helps multi-passionate business owners and executives bring harmony to all the layers of their lives, from work to side projects, from friends and family to hobbies, community, and beyond. With Emily's help, you too can make every minute matter. She helps you determine what earns your time and how to efficiently accomplish what matters. One of the many things I love about Emily is that she does not impose her will on her clients. She listens to them. That way she can better help them cultivate the lives they want to live. You can set up a complimentary call with Emily today by visiting organizeforsuccess.com. Q Tucker is joining us here on the David Glenn Show. It's kind of crazy, the timing, at the same time that college athletics has been in a state of massive flux with the transfer portal and name, image, likeness issues of their own. Your organization at the high school level has had all sorts of changes, including those that you just outlined. One thing that you all had to deal with at one time or another, and it helps explain why we're still playing high school football, as almost as Santa Claus is coming to town, right? Which is not always the case. What were the biggest challenges that Hurricane Helene presented to your member schools at the high school level, as we saw colleges, lose home games and lose a lot of money? And of course, so many citizens of our state have had to deal with very real world repercussions of Hurricane Helene. How did it impact your member schools, and how did your organization, the NCHSAA, help those members respond to this crisis this past year?
Well, one of the things that we were handcuffed in being able to do, as I mentioned, we no longer could look at endowed dollars to be able to say, okay, the board of directors would advise us to cut checks so that we can give those monies to every member school across Western North Carolina that were impacted. We no longer could do that. We no longer could give grants. So that was something that we had to wrestle with. So what we ended up doing was being very supportive and trying to encourage our member schools to have those funding opportunities at the local level to provide resources to the mountains. We tried to highlight those things that were going on by the member schools, put those in front of the membership, and every week try to remind our schools that we need to look out for our neighbors in the West. The challenges that came additionally had to do with scheduling. How do you play athletics when over 3/4 of the state has not been impacted, but we know 1/4 in particular has been devastated? So we had to make some adjustments to some allowances in being able to play contests during a week. Maybe they could exceed what is the usual number of contests to try to make up contests. We looked at the schedule. We didn't change all of the end dates in the state championships, for example. In volleyball, it was still the same weekend, but we made those allowances during the week so that they could get those opportunities in. Cross country was held as it normally is. Golf, some of those where we depend on external venues that the general public maybe uses, such as golf. For the women, we couldn't change that necessarily because we maybe would have found ourselves without venues to play those. So we had to keep those where they are. But the biggest one obviously was here in football that we had to delay it, as you said, almost to run head on into Santa Claus. But our member schools have been great. We had a school in Western North Carolina, Mountain Heritage, that was playing last Friday night in the semifinals of the regional. So I think that indicates right there that sports can be so important in helping bring communities back together. They rallied around that team and other teams in Western North Carolina, so much so that they were able to make some deep runs in the playoffs. Several students winning cross-country championships after having been devastated with maybe losing their home, losing clothing, whatever the case may be. They were able to find a way to get out and run and get out and do those things necessary. Polk County, playing for a state championship after having their own issues there in Polk County. So the success stories, the feel-good stories, they've been out there, and I'm as proud as I can be of the folks in Western North Carolina for their resilience and for their ability to help one another and still allow their young people to be able to play.
Another big issue in your world that college sports fans have been dealing with for multiple years now is name, image, likeness. I'm going to try to give a very quick summary, and then I want you to elaborate and give us the state of affairs as it applies to name, image, likeness, and public school athletes here in North Carolina. I remember your organization, your member schools voted to allow it here in North Carolina, and then the Board of Education under this new governing structure swooped in and said, no, we're not going to allow it. And then there was a lawsuit filed, and a judge, I believe in October, said, well, yes, we are going to allow it after all. So is that a good summary? Where do things stand now? And as we head into the 2025 calendar year, and then of course the 2025-26 academic year, what are those rules going to be as they apply to the high school athletes at public schools in our state?
You're right, David. We tried to get ahead of the situation. Unfortunately, we were shut down. But to the credit of the State Board of Education, they realized that this is a bigger issue than just simply saying no. And they had already begun the work of trying to come up with a rule. But then, of course, the lawsuit hit, and that just, I guess it sped up the timeline a little bit. So where we are right now is that student athletes in North Carolina can be reimbursed for the use of their name, image, and likeness. Now, there are some things that students cannot do. Q Tucker, for example, is an athlete. We'll say an entity wants to use my name, my image, and likeness. Well, I can't wear the jersey of my school. I can't be standing in my gym and promoting some, whatever they're selling or whatever the product is. I can't be promoting that by using my school name, my LEA, my PSU, my public school name. I can't do any of that, but I could be paid for my name, my image and likeness. And what I would need to do is make sure that it doesn't have anything to do with alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, firearms, along those lines. I have to make sure that I have taken an NFHS course that outlines what name, image, and likeness is, and really gives that overview of some things you need to know, or that Q Tucker would need to know if I'm that athlete, so that I am a little better prepared, because there are tax implications for the families. So they have to do that. They have to send that certificate of completion to us. They have to send the agreement to this office. And then we have to make sure that it does follow the things that are in place based on the judge ruling, but primarily based on the rule that the State Board of Education came up with, that the judge says, okay, this is the rule that you were going to implement July 1st, 2025. Well, you're going to implement it now. And right today, we probably have about 10 student athletes that have submitted an NIL agreement to this office, along with the other people back home, and making sure that they have holding harmless different groups of people, and that they are doing exactly what I indicated, that they are not endorsing or advertising some product and then using their school as the backdrop for all of that. So a lot of moving parts, but again, we're dependent on the rule that the State Board of Education has given us, and then dependent on our member schools, making sure we've provided a checklist for them to try to ensure that, okay, this has been taken care of, this has been taken care of, so that those young people do not lose their eligibility to play high school.
Q Tucker is the commissioner of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, joining us once again here on the David Glenn Show. We brought we call it the Old North State Tailgate and Traveling Sports Circus. We were there for your football championship events last year. We will be there again this year at both UNC's Kenan Stadium and NC State's Carter Finley Stadium. If I were Dave Doran of the Wolfpack, the college coach, or now it's actually Bill Belichick of the Tar Heels, I can't believe I'm saying that out loud, I would like the fact that these high school players and their families are in either, my Kenan Stadium or my Carter Finley Stadium. How does that site selection process work? I know those athletes love being in these 50, 60,000 seat stadiums. But I guess some people think it's an unfair recruiting advantage for the Tar Heels or the Wolfpack if those games are there every year. How does that work?
Well, it also, the NCAA has guidelines in place also that don't allow the coaches to do certain things during certain windows of time, in the calendar. I'm not sure whether we're in an open period, will the coaches be able to get out there? But what does not happen when we play at those entities, in those venues, the head coach is not down on the field. The head coach is not trying to come out and, insert himself in the games themselves. Now, you'll see the assistant coaches, if it is an open period, they may be sitting in the stands waiting to speak if that's the opportunity. So the schools have to follow the NCAA guidelines as it relates to what they can and cannot do. Is it a recruiting advantage? I think it is. I think it's not only a recruiting advantage as it relates to the players themselves, but it's a recruiting advantage when you just are trying to get students to come to your institutions of higher learning. Mamas and daddies come on that campus. They have to drive around to find a place to park, and they like what they see. So now my child doesn't play sports, but I like the looks of this campus, so I'm going to let my child go here if he or she wants to. So that's a good thing. And that's been one of the reasons, Dave, that So many of our contests are played in college venues because they recognize that this is an opportunity to impress mamas and daddies as much as anything and hope that their students will enroll in our university. So we have, for years and years, had a great relationship with NC State, with UNC. So we really don't have to go out and try to beg them to be able to come. They really want us there, and we've been able to sustain that. And then we've reached out to other entities, other universities. We've played at Wake Forest in the past. We've played at Duke University. We haven't played in the stadium with where the Panthers play, although they would love for us to be there. But again, sometimes when you look at those big stadiums, you get swallowed up. And we're not quite like Alabama and Texas, where high school football just packs those arenas. We still like that intimate setting, and we're able to do that to a great extent, playing at Carter Finley and at Keenan, and when we're at Wake or we're at Duke. So we hope to continue those outstanding relationships as we move forward.
Although I've been here in North Carolina for basically my entire adulthood, I've lived in Florida for a little while. I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I've learned over the years that obviously each state does govern high school athletics differently, but sometimes something even as basic as I play for a class fill in the blank school. In some states, there's 8 classifications. And I bring this up because I know you at the North Carolina High School Athletic Association do have to revisit these classification rules. I think it's on a 4-year cycle. And starting next year, I believe you have something called the Big 32, which sounds really cool. But you're also going to have, I think it's going to be, not just 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to be 1 through 8. Tell us how this new system is going to work. What's the Big 32? And what were the reasons behind these changes that kick in, I believe, next year?
Well, what the reason that we've expanded, number one, had to do with an amendment, a change to our bylaws. The bylaws were amended that essentially say no classification would have more than 64 schools in it. So when our board of directors received that vote from the membership, they had to make a decision. If we go from 4 to 5 or 6, is that enough? Well, we had a committee that had been studying this, and they suggested that the rate at which we're adding schools to the membership, we would find ourselves needing to revisit that amendment. And you don't want to amend your bylaws every time you turn it around. So it was suggested that we go to 8 so that gives the growth opportunity. So the board approved 8 classes. Then the committee studied a little bit more and suggested, well, what if we take the largest schools that have the largest average daily membership and we put them in that large class, and it would be your 8A class. So that's where we get that Big 32. Then we've taken the 7 remaining classes, divided the number of schools as equally as possible within those classes. And so we're looking at about 59 in 7 through 2, down to 2. And then I think 1A maybe has 58 schools in it. And now, right before I got on this call to chat with you, we've been working on all of that. We're at the point now that we're looking at conferences. The realignment committee, as we call them, have been working, had a meeting yesterday afternoon. And it looks like we're about ready to go ahead and release the conference, the first draft to the membership. And the plan is that would be released tomorrow. And so that's the impetus, or that's the reason for 8 classes. And that's where we are. Now, with that comes unique challenges. Where are we going to play all these championships? We were just talking about 2 venues for football. Are we going to need, how many will we need next year to play the football championships? What about the venue to play basketball? What about softball, baseball? So all of that will come into play once we get back from the holiday break. Then we start, the realignment will continue to do their work. That committee will continue working. But then we've got another committee that's now trying to figure out, how do you get into the playoffs? What about conference champions? What are you going to do about the RPI? All of those things will factor in. So next year will be a historic year in terms of moving from 4 to 8. And yes, we'll be like some of our sister states that will have more than just the 4 classes.
The Lawson Insurance Group in Raleigh is a family-owned business led by 3 actual brothers who happen to be huge sports fans: Ken Lawson, Miller Lawson, and Michael Lawson. I know these guys, I trust these guys, and I send these guys my own insurance business and that of my family. The next time you have insurance needs, I hope you'll do the same. The Lawson Insurance Group is known for its commitment to community and its dedication to ensuring that North Carolinians and their businesses are prepared for life's inevitable challenges, with the reminder that as a high street insurance partner, Lawson Insurance Group offers local expertise and support that, combined with High Street's extensive national resources, means more choice and support for you as their client. To learn more, search Lawson Insurance Group online. The Lawson Insurance website will be the first link that pops up.
This segment brought to you by our great friends at Atlantic Tire and Service, where DG and his family take all of their vehicles for routine maintenance, service needs, and a world-class selection of new tires. Atlantic Tire and Service, your one-stop tire and auto repair provider with highly trained technicians and a sales and support staff that are second to none. They've grown to 6 Triangle area locations, 2 in Raleigh, 2 in Cary, 1 in Durham, and 1 in Wake Forest. You can learn more online at AtlanticTireOnline.com.
Last thing for Q Tucker, she is the commissioner and a Hall of Famer from the North Carolina High School Athletic Association. As we thank you for your time, as always, and let you go, what would your message be, just in a broad sense, about how this new governmental structure is working? Is it allowing you and your staff to fulfill your duties? Do you feel okay about it? Would you ask for something to be revisited, with the best interests of not only your staff and organization, but I know you always bring us back to the young people who participate in high school athletics here in North Carolina?
Well, fortunately, I can say that the relationship that we have established with the State Board of Education, especially their legal team, as well as our legal attorney, great working relationships, so that we know that we are in compliance with the law that was passed by the General Assembly. So that's number one. And so we're very fortunate. Chairman Eric Davis, has released, his team of people to work with us hand in glove so that we can continue to do the things we've always done. So towards that end, it's going well. The eligibility rules, many of those we were already working with State Board on, especially things like the medical side, how often you have to have a physical exam. What are the scholastic requirements? Those things were already in place. So we just simply added a few more pieces to the puzzle as it relates to the eligibility requirements. What I would hope would happen as we continue to move forward is that the powers that be, and obviously the General Assembly, would allow the state superintendent of public instruction, who is going to be Maurice Green, who was in Charlotte for a number of years. That's where I first met him. He was in Guilford County, worked with the foundation, R.J. Reynolds Foundation. So I think he comes with a great skill set. And I would hope that the General Assembly would trust his leadership, as well as the already established working relationship we have with the State Board, to let us continue to do athletics the way we can. You can't run high school athletics just because you sit in the seat as a senator or because you're a representative. You have to have a lot more expertise. And so I hope that they will continue to recognize that and won't try to handcuff us in other areas, that they won't just listen when someone is upset because their son or daughter is deemed ineligible, and now they call the General Assembly and say, hey, this is not fair. that they would stay away from some of those things. There's no saying you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure everybody understands what state associations do in each of the 50 states plus the District of Columbia. We all do the same thing a little differently in many of those states, but we always do it with the best interests of the students we serve. And I hope that they will recognize that. But I'm pleased to say that we're continuing to function. We're continuing to be successful. And I think based on the championships I've seen this past fall, up to this point, is that we're still crowning outstanding champions. We're still producing great young people with a skill set to be successful in whatever they attempt to do once they leave our programs.
I just realized during your answer that there has been a habit in our state that if somebody is in power that certain people in the General Assembly don't like as much, all of a sudden that person loses their power. And Mo Green, of course, is probably not the preferred candidate of certain General Assembly people. So I feel naive after asking you that question. Now I understand the political nature of these things. As a longtime North Carolinian, I hope the General Assembly does its best to keep its hands off and allows the people that we have voted into office to do their jobs. Her name is Q Tucker. You're a lot of fun, Q. I'm so excited to talk with you again. Thank you for carving out some time for us. We're excited about being at these games this weekend. For our viewers and listeners, reminder, we have not yet figured out how to be in two places at one time. So we have chosen, I think it's Kenan Stadium Friday, we'll be there with our crew. And then it'll be Carter Finley with multiple games Saturday with our crew. But thank you for this face-to-face visit as always. Congratulations on your many halls of fame at this point, and keep up the good work with you and your great staff at the North Carolina High School Athletic Association.
Well, thank you very much for this time to just kind of share, and especially thank you for continuing to share the message about education-based athletics in our state.
Thank you, Q, and thanks to all of you across North Carolina for joining us today on the David Glenn Show right here on the North Carolina Sports Network.